Hello everyone, I'm Happy Caldwell, and thank you for joining me for today's edition of Arkansas Alive. Today's society and culture is becoming more and more saturated with evil. And there are warnings, signs of a spiritual storm being recognized and talked about in our churches. The rapture of the church is growing near. Prophecy expert Terry James joins me to talk about his new book called Trajectory, Tracking the Approach of the Tribulation Storm. Are you ready? We're going to find out more about that. That's straight ahead as Arkansas Alive starts right now. I want to show you the book that we're going to be discussing with Terry James. And Terry lives in Benton, Arkansas, so we are very blessed to have this ministry of prophecy and end times and revelation right here in our own backyard. So I want to encourage you to get a copy of his book, Trajectory. I'll tell you how you can do it. I'll give you all the information a little bit later. But first, Terry, let me thank you for being here.
Nice to be here.
Always glad to have you here. Every once in a while, I will call you and ask you questions, and I sometimes use some of your material, but so far I've always been giving you credit for it.
Well, I appreciate you so much. I just appreciate being in the same vicinity as Happy Caldwell.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. Okay, let's talk about the book, Trajectory, Tracking the Approaching Tribulation Storm. And I'm so glad you added that as a subtitle, Tracking the Approaching Tribulation Storm. We hear a lot of teaching about leading up to the tribulation, but we don't hear enough about the tribulation itself. I guess it's because we as Bible-believing Christians, born-again Christians, believe in a pre-trib rapture. We think, well, I don't need to know about that. I'm not going to be here anyway. But we need to know what Satan is focused on and what he's going to do and how it's going to affect the rest of the world. So, let me ask you some questions here. When did you become interested in Bible prophecy, and why is it important that we as Christians know about prophecy?
Well, I first became interested as a real young man, a boy as a matter of fact, in Pekin, Illinois, where we lived at the time. They taught Bible prophecy. They taught it from the pre-trib view, pre-trib of the rapture and so forth. And so I really was developed as a love for prophecy when I was a very young boy. And it just grew, and really I got into public relations and other things and later in life after military service and so forth. But I really started writing a novel and called Jacob's Trouble 666.
Wow.
And it was about, of course, the development of the Antichrist system. Looking back on that now, I can see where I was kind of wrong on some things, but I'm telling you, I'm amazed too that some of the things that have developed that have come to pass that I wrote didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing other than I believed the Bible, what the Bible said about it, and so forth. And so that's how this book kind of came about. As you know, I've put together a lot of compilation books. That means books written by a number of prophetic scholars and writers and broadcasters and different things. So I've done a number of books like that. I've done a number on my own, and plus I've written a few novels. And this particular book came along because I think that we can see this great tribulation storm you're talking about developing out there. It's like looking across the horizon and seeing just terrible clouds approaching.
Yeah.
And so I thought people need to understand exactly what is approaching. Yeah. And yes, it's right that people who believe in the pre-trib rapture say that Jesus is going to come for us before that time, and that's neither here nor there what people believe. It's what the Word says. Right. Paul the Apostle showed us that mystery that we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed, and that's a rapture. But the fact is that people who are not saved, who do not know Christ, they're going to have to face this if they're alive at the time this tribulation breaks full force upon the world. And that's what prophecy should do, I think, The desire to, that is, at least that is my ministry's desire, is to make people aware that they need to be rapture ready. And what that means is to have Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, because He's the only shelter there is from that approaching storm. And so many people don't even have the slightest idea, including Christians, of what's coming.
Yeah.
And so that's the purpose of this book, is to make sure that people understand, and to the degree, like this program and others, that we can get that message out, well, all the better. So I hope people get that book and see what some of these great writers are saying from the Bible.
You know, some of the scriptures tell us that some things will not be revealed until the time. And in Revelation chapter 1, Jesus told John to write the things which he has seen, the things which are, the things which shall be hereafter. So we know what has already happened, but we don't know yet what's going to happen unless we know prophecy, unless we know what the Word says. Now, define this word trajectory. I don't know that everybody understands what that means.
On previous programs, we had a panel, and we had that same question. You know, this word trajectory is a word that may be a little bit confusing. Trajectory is like, well, if you're shooting a, well, let's say a bullet or a missile, and you have a target out there, and the trajectory that bullet or missile takes is that line, that flight of path, that line of path it takes to hit that target.
Right.
Trajectory in this case is a trajectory that this world is taking, based upon all the things we see developing in culture, society, and all these other things, technology, religious apostasy, other things. That's a trajectory that the world is on toward this tribulation storm we're talking about. Tribulation storm being the target. And so trajectory is what this world is on, the path this world is on. And that's what each of these writers cover, I think, very well in this book.
Now, you mentioned the signs that put humanity on the fast track, the trajectory toward the end of the age. What are some of those signs?
Well, I think we see signals like we see technology developing.
Yeah.
Early in the century, last century, there was nothing practically like there is now. Still horse and buggy in the very early parts of last century. And now we've come from that point, we've come all the way to able to track individuals through surveillance society.
Right.
And many of our governmental agencies have the ability to track. We have people who are assassinated in other countries because they're able to track terrorists and so forth, right down to the last step of where they're taking. So we have technology. We have all kinds of other things. We have the religious apostasy developing, and I don't mean to be casting aspersions on any particular religion, but we know this Pope, and even some of the Catholic people will say that they feel this Pope is just not the right guy for the job. In Catholicism, he has said things like atheists will be in heaven. There'll be atheists in heaven, like there are many paths to heaven. And this is another thing that the Bible prophesies that will be taking place, an apostasy, a turning from the faith, defection from the faith, to more or less, I guess, be complicit with what the world is saying. And the world is saying there are many pathways to God. That's just a couple of things. There are so many that we go into.
Okay, here's another one. Signs in the heavens that are coming into view, which show the trajectory the world is on for fulfillment of prophecy, especially to Israel, to the Jews, like the 4 blood moons or things like that, in the signs in the heaven. Jesus said that the signs and the seasons, that we don't need to know the signs and the seasons, but when he was saying that, I think he was saying, you don't need to know the signs and the seasons yet. Mm-hmm. That was 2,000 years ago. But we do see the signs and seasons that he prophesied now.
Mm-hmm. And he did get onto the Judaizers and those who failed to see his coming.
Yeah.
They did not see, he called them hypocrites. And had very harsh language for them. Unlike what a lot of people think about Jesus, he had, when criticism was due, He was there with it. And he criticized the Judaizers for not recognizing the Messiah when he was right there among them.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that today. People are not recognizing, and I believe that's one reason. When Jesus rode into Jerusalem to be crucified that weekend, he came to be crucified. But when he first came in, he was riding that little donkey, and all of them said, they praised him. They were just, because he'd done all these miracles and things. And the Judaizers tried to shut him up. Say, don't say that. Don't say that. You're not the Messiah, and don't be talking like that. And he said, if I tell you right now, if I didn't, the very stones would cry out.
Right.
I think we're seeing some of that now. Some of the stones crying out. Maybe with some of the geophysical things that are going on. And so that's a very important point.
Okay, let's take a more recent situation, the recent pandemic. Of course, the president said it's over. So we thank God for that. Which the asking of the world and the vaccine mandates, do they play a part in Bible prophecy fulfillment?
Well, I'm convinced they do, because I think that it has simply taught people to be more compliant, to comply with the government, what the government wants. To me, a lot of this was contrived, and that is to gain control over the populace, particularly here in the United States. The United States is the apex nation of the world. If they can control this country with a lot of their scare tactics and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that the virus and so forth is not real. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But I am saying that they use that to a large extent to affect elections and other things. I think they just used it, and so it is something that I think the Antichrist is going to use. He's going to use similar scare tactics and nuclear war, no telling what else, in order to scare people. And they've already set a precedent with getting people to comply with the vaccines and so forth. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It's setting the stage for a coming Antichrist system.
Now, you mentioned the nuclear potential, and right now, as we speak, we know that Vladimir Putin is threatening nuclear response, basically to Ukraine. But the way it's being projected on the media, everybody is fearful. Oh, what about a nuclear war? And you and I know, because we were both in college at the same time, the Bay of Pigs, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, from 62 to 66. I was in the Navy during those years, and we were down there as gunfire support. I was there at that Bay of Pigs, and I saw what was going on. Now, we weren't Christians. We were just young kids, so to speak. But historians now say that is the closest that we've ever come, that America's ever come, to nuclear war. Okay, we had a commander-in-chief that called Khrushchev and Castro's bluff, and they backed off. Now we're hearing that this Bay of Pigs incident was the closest we ever came. Okay. I don't believe, now you correct me if I'm wrong, I think I asked you this before, until after the rapture and the church is gone, because Thessalonians says the church is the restrainer, I don't think there's going to be any nuclear war. There's not going to be any financial disaster with our financial grid until after the rapture. Then, as Hilton Sutton used to say, World War III or nuclear, when Russia invades Israel from the north, all kinds of things can happen after the rapture.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, and we see it in Revelation chapter 6, the writing of the first of the, when John goes to heaven symbolically there, and Jesus opens the seals and so forth. Yeah. First one to come out is a white horse, the rider on a white horse, who is Antichrist, and he's talking about peace and all of this kind of thing. But what follows, the red horse of war, and it takes peace from the earth, the Bible says. So that follows that. And of course, the Antichrist is not going to come on the scene, where we're told in 2 Thessalonians, in Daniel chapter 9, we're told he won't come on the scene until he signs a peace covenant. And the church will be gone before that happens, according to the way we believe in the pre-trib view. And I believe that's God's view, because we're not appointed to wrath,
right.
Revelation said, Revelation 3:10. And so, yeah, I don't think, people talk about, I hear all these pundits and so forth on television talking about all-out nuclear exchanges and nuclear war and so forth. And I'm just as calm as I can be, because in my spirit I'm told
right.
that no, God is restraining. He is still a restrainer. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 and so forth. He's still restraining evil. It does not fit. And Jesus said, here's what Jesus said about it in Luke chapter 17, verses 26 through 30, basically, 28 through 30 anyway. He said it'd be like exactly when he comes back, it's going to be exactly like it was in the days of Lot.
Okay.
He said they were buying, selling, they were building, they were planting, they were marrying, giving in marriage, they were doing all these things that are normal. He was not talking, like some other seminaries say, he was not talking about the second coming, Revelation 9,
right.
19:11, because there'll be only maybe 3/4 of the world's population will have been denuded from wrath, God's wrath, and all that's gone on during the tribulation. So he was talking here about he was talking here strictly about the rapture of the church. He said it's going to be exactly like it was in the days of Lot. They were buying, building, doing all
right.
these things. And he said the very day that Lot went out, we know that the angels came and they took Lot and his family, except for the wife who looked back, and there's a lot can be said about that, I guess, but took them out to Zoar, the city of Zoar. That very day, devastation fell, from heaven. Just totally obliterated Sodom and Gomorrah. And they're just now finding charge of burned pottery and so forth underneath the surface there, beneath the Red Sea, from that time. So that if we had all-out nuclear war, one thing it would do is completely denude Jesus' words,
right.
negate them, because he says it's going to happen the very day. Otherwise, it's going to be business as usual right at that moment. And so that's my take on it, and has been, and I haven't seen any reason to change.
And your peace and your comfort is not in, quote, prophecy conspiracies. It's in the Word of God.
It's in the Word of God, yeah.
I don't have to have somebody prophesy to me about something if I know the Word, and I'm not concerned about the prophecies.
That's why it's so important to be in the Word.
Yeah. You have to know the Word. All right, let's talk about two more things in the trajectory here. Let's talk about globalism. How does globalism fit into the trajectory and acceleration toward the end of the age?
Well, it fits because that is a primary indicator of what's going to be hereafter. It's going to be after these things, as John was told, metatauta.
Yeah.
After these things, it's development of the Antichrist system. And that's what globalism is all about. He's going to control most of the world, I would say. Perhaps not all. It says he causes all to worship him. So I don't know exactly what it entails, because there's going to be, for example, tidings out of the East, Far East, and I think that's China, king of the kings of the East, who's going to bother him. But it's all of this is gravitating. The trajectory is, as we see it developing, is globalism. Now we look at the World Economic Forum, for example, and the UN and all of its doings, and some of these people, these operatives who are bent on bringing the United States down so that their globalist agenda can go forward.
Yeah.
All of this is showing us that the world is headed on that trajectory toward the Antichrist, Satan's blueprint for the Antichrist kingdom. And that's why globalism is so important to consider. We have nationalism here. We have sovereign nation, which is what God appointed for mankind. But now we're going back to Babel. Yeah. They want to make everything go back to Babel. They want a one world, a globalist world where they can control, not God.
Well, I want to tell people how they can get your book, and then we'll come back. And there's one more thing I want to ask you about, and that's climate change. That's on the way to the trajectory. Okay, here's how you can get Terry's book, Trajectory, the tracking Approaching the Tribulation Storm. You can go to Amazon.com and you can order the book. It's $19.75. So you can get your copy. Go to Amazon.com and order your copy today. I guarantee you well, let me put it this way. If you don't know the Word of God and what God has to say about these things, then you will be informed, and hopefully you will be encouraged. So I want you to get your copy. I'll let you know one more time before we close today how you can get Terry's book. Okay, let's talk about climate change. Climate change is proclaimed by the globalists to be destroying the planet due to man-made pollutions. Now, some believe this means in prophetic terms that the literal geophysical elements will be raging. However, many prophecy scholars and students believe that Jesus' prophecy about the seas and waves roaring refer to the seas of people. Are we supposed to look for the literal seas and waves roaring, or peoples of the earth roaring like seas?
Well, Happy, I think we're both looking for both. I think they are both. Because the seas and the waves being the geophysical elements. And again, we go back to talking about Jesus when he came into Jerusalem. He said, if they don't praise me, the very elements are going to cry out, the very rocks. And the world as a whole has turned its back on God. And so I think that's going to be part of the tribulation in particular is going to get particularly bad, but we already see some anomalies here and there that have shown to be what many think are geophysical elements that are raging in the end time, in sense of end times. And of course, the other thing is that Jesus was talking about the waves of people, the peoples of the world. And all we have to do is look around us, the seas of humanity roaring. That's all we have to do. As a matter of fact, John the Apostle, in writing the Revelation, saw this Antichrist, this beast coming up out of the sea. He'd come out of the sea of people. That was a symbolic sea of peoples. Yeah. And they were raging. It was a storm. They were raging, and the beast came up out of the sea of people. And so we look around. All we have to do is look around us. Here, even here in this country, there are elements that are raging, and I mean uncontrollable rage. And the globalists, those who want to change America, for example, are not doing anything about it. You take people who have peaceful protests, I mean, they're put in jail. Some of them are still languishing in jail. But you have people who have burned down churches, who have done all of these things and terrible things, even been people killed in their protests and their mob rule, and they just let them go. It's our judicial system is bad. So the seas and waves are roaring, but all across the country. You look at all of Europe, particularly now that we see the gas about to be cut off and so forth, and so we're going to see, and that's going to affect the economy and everything else, and already is. And so I believe that we're looking at something that's we're going to see this more and more. This prophecy in Luke chapter 21 about the seas and waves.
I read an article by the founder of the Weather Channel. I think his name was John Copeland, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he says that climate change is a hoax.
I heard him say that.
Now, this is the founder of the Weather Channel, and he said that this is mainly a hoax because the people that are pushing the climate change, it used to be global warming, now it's climate change.
That's right.
They have to have some kind of fake information that is supposedly calling this, so they hire and pay scientists to come up with the evidence to support climate change. Yeah. But let me look into the camera. Folks, listen. All of the things that you're hearing in the news, secular news, is not necessarily true. They don't have any, they don't have any allegiance to honesty. It's whatever bleeds leads. I mean, whatever gets the most viewers, because that's how they come up with their formula for charging their advertisers. Look, we have this many people watching. Yes, What were they watching? Well, they had some spectacular event going on and all of the things that happened. So you can't believe the secular news. You need to get into the good news of the Word of God. One more thing, Terry. We believe we see one major prophecy shaping before our eyes this very moment. It's the prophesied attack from the north against God's chosen nation, Israel. This prophecy by Ezekiel, chapter 38, 39, is rapidly taking shape in the terms of a stage setting for that assault. Now, that's Russia as we know it. So let's talk about that a minute. We got about a minute and a half left.
Yeah, I believe we see that happen because a coalition of that very force is forming north of Israel, directly north of Israel right now. You have Russia, and I believe that's Rosh in the Scythian, ancient Scythian language. Rosh is going to be the leader of this coalition. And you have what they call Persia, of course, and that is basically most of Iran and additional territories. Persia, so you have Rosh, Persia, and you have Targama.
Yeah.
Those are the three major ones. Now, they're all there's Put and Gomer and all these others they throw in there, but those are the three major ones. And that's Turkey. And so we have Russia, we have Iran, we have Turkey, and they formed a coalition north of Israel. And they've done a lot of things together, through Syria mainly. Yeah. And that's another prophecy that may come to pass.
I was in Syria. I mean, I was in Israel for the dedication of the embassy in 2018. Russia's already built a base in Syria.
Yeah.
And I visited with the commander of one of the Israeli naval ships, and he said the Russians are patrolling the coastline on a regular basis. He said they're looking for a soft water port. They're looking for entrance. Yeah. Okay, folks, I want you to get this book, The Trajectory by Terry James. You've seen him on Skywatch. You've seen him on other national TV programs. Here's how you get it. Go to Amazon.com. It's $19.75. Well worth the investment that you're going to make in this book. Very well written, and it will explain things to you. If your pastor doesn't teach on this, then you need to get these copies. I thank you for joining us, and Terry, I thank you. Let me shake your hand before you leave. I appreciate so
thank
much
you. Appreciate you being here.
You coming on board and for writing these books. Remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas, and where you live, too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on Twitter at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.